Okay, our first speaker is going to be Heidi Keuler. She has been a fish biologist with the Fish and Wildlife Service in La Crosse, Wisconsin for 12 years. She is coordinator of Fishers and Farmers Partnership for the Upper Mississippi River Basin. And Heidi will provide a brief overview of fishers and farmers and the scientific and social tools they have been working with.
All right, thank you, and thanks for inviting me to come talk today. So, long before I was harassing silver carp in my boat, and long before I was squeezing sturgeon, I grew up in the driftless area just outside of Coon Valley, Wisconsin. And for those of you that grew up in the driftless area, you know what it's like, here with best management practices. But anytime I travel outside of the driftless area, it just was bewildering to know why they weren't doing these kind of practices. But there's a lot of history there. They say it took about 70 years for it to turn this highly productive land into this wasteland that you see before you. And so we saw images of this throughout the driftless back in the 20s and the 30s. They said 12 to 15 feet of sediment came down from our blufflands. And so it looked like there was nowhere to turn, but we had Hugh Hammond Bennett, who was the chief of the Soil Conservation Service, or Soil Erosion Service, which today is NRCS, came to our rescue. And he brought 4 conservation planners, and they took the Coon Creek watershed, divided it into 4 sections, and those conservation planners then worked with farmers to get them signed up into the programs and do best management practices. So they brought the CCC, which is the Civilian Conservation Corps, to Coon Valley, Wisconsin. And Ella Leopold is actually part of this program. He came from the University of Wisconsin. And in this group, they had an agronomist, they had an engineer, they had a wildlife biologist. I'm sure because of Ella Leopold was involved. And so we saw changes happen. So it took about another 70 years after all of the work that they did, all the conservation practices, and today we have this beautiful landscape before us. And it's pretty amazing with all the work that NRCS, Trout Unlimited, and all of our partners have done. We have this amazing landscape. Fish and farms can work and live side by side. And so it's this passion that I grew up with that I come with to fishers and farmers, and I'm hoping to spread that throughout the landscape. And in some areas, they say that the Wisconsin DNR is actually moving these trout because they're stunted, because there's so many fish. They said 3,000 fish per mile in some of these areas. So Fishers and Farmers is one of the 19 fish habitat partnerships, and Chris went over a lot of this, so I'm going to just briefly kind of touch on some of this. But our brand new projects you see outlined there in the blue, and so we have at least one project occurring in each state. And so we're working on the 4 strategies you see above you there, and as well as the goals. And common theme in all of our projects is we want landowners working with us. So we are working with landowner committees, and if there isn't a landowner committee there, we're working to establish one. On our steering committee, we have both natural resources and agricultural organizations. So we have Iowa Soybean Association, we have Minnesota Corn Growers, we have Missouri Agribusiness, and our brand new ag partner is the Wallace Pasture Project out of Wisconsin. Rod Oftke is he's a managed grazer, and he sits on our steering committee and provides input, which is very beneficial. So currently our chairs are Jack Lauer from Minnesota DNR and Steve Soderman, who was part of the Minnesota Corn Growers Association. So Fishers and Farmers is working to put these landowner committees in charge and bring in strategic outreach and then provide some flexible support. And one of the first landowner committees that we worked with was down in Missouri, down in the Bourbeuse, Meramec. And down in Missouri, we're working on fencing cattle out of streams, getting them out of the riparian corridors. And with that, though, since there isn't any shade for them, the local FFA group, local high school group worked with the farmer to provide these shade tents. So it was pretty cool that the high schoolers came and helped construct these shade tents. And Bob Baker, the farmer there, said that it's pretty amazing, but his girls tend to rotate underneath these shade tents without help or assistance from him. He said they all take some time, take their turn under the shade. That's Bob there working and putting some geo-web in. And so to date, we have quite a bit of fencing going in, riparian corridor, and so projects going on for a long term. One thing we also, once we select a focal area, a focal watershed, we're there for the long haul. We're not going to do the shotgun pattern. We're not going to just do a project and move on. We tend to stay, we want to stay in that watershed for a long time and work with those people. So Chris talked to you earlier about the oxbow restoration, so I don't really need to go into detail about that. But the cool thing is our steering committee always gets out and meets the farmers. And so that's been pretty fun. We rotate our meetings around so that our steering committee can ask them questions and get more information. And the Boone watershed has gained national recognition for all the work that they've been doing there. So that's been pretty, a really nice highlight for us. In Minnesota, we're working on 7 Mile, and I believe Abigail talked about 7 Mile earlier this morning. Heavy tiled landscape. I believe about 80% or more is the watershed is tiled, and so you can see the tile outlet coming out here and just massive erosion going on. That's Jeff Lauer at the top there from Minnesota DNR taking us out and looking at the property. And so not only is there tile outflow erosion going on, but there's overland flow. So you can see if you took a step in here, it's about 12 feet down. And so it's, you know, besides not being good for the environment, it's also a danger and safety issue. So we're working with Nicollet County there, as well as Great River Greening, putting in water and sediment control basins. Also, we have some in-stream continuous monitoring going on in 7 Mile, which is really cool. Besides that work, there's also Red Top Farms, which is some working with the Minnesota Department of Ag, looking at some of that work. And just about every partner you can think of is in 7 Mile right now, from the Corps of Engineers all the way down to NGOs and county folks. So if we had to count all the partners working on 7 Mile, I'm guessing we're at about 15, 20 different groups. So Fishers and Farmers has been working on several scientific tools, such as fish habitat assessments. We worked with downstream strategies, as well as the other fish habitat partnerships in the Midwest, such as the Driftless Partnership, Midwest Glacial Lakes, and several others on these fish habitat assessments. And we were mostly looking at smallmouth bass habitat. Fishers and Farmers works mostly on warm and cool water streams. We do some cold water, but not as much. We like to focus on some of those other streams. The Driftless Partnership, as you know, works mostly on the cold and cool water streams, so we're trying not to overlap. One thing we really don't want to do is duplicate effort. As you know, there's so many different organizations out there working on streams. The last thing we need is for duplication. So we also worked on a climate model, a regional assessment model, as you see there. And then our USGS partners worked on some renter, owner work. And so all that can be found on our website. So this is one of the outputs of the smallmouth bass probability of presence in the upper Miss. And you can see some of the areas that we're currently working on are highlighted here. And we hope to do a lot more work in the future. And with the model, of course, comes protection, priorities, and restoration. Now, a model will tell you a lot of things, but sometimes it doesn't tell you where there's farmers willing to work. So we're also bringing in socioeconomic data and talking to the local folks that are working in those watersheds. Just recently, we hired Alex Prentice from Missouri Department of Conservation to work on GS model. He's going to bring in some more information from NRCS and some of our other partners and try to select some more focal areas. So some of the information, like I said, can be found here, and you can find all this information from Ohio River Basin, Great Lakes, and Driftless. All of those fish habitat assessments can be accessed on that website. So if any of you are from some of those areas and are interested in that data, you can find it at midwestfishhabitats.org. So one of the things that's kind of unique about Fishers and Farmers is we're also interested in social aspects in our projects. We're very interested in the biology, the fish, the water quality, but we're also interested in the social parts. So we've been having some of our partners have been digging into some of the data and writing some of the work that they've been working on. Rock Creek and then also some of you have heard of Lisa Schulte-Moore. She and her staff worked on a great article that's in the journal Soil and Water. We provide different training thanks to Missouri Department of Conservation. Actually, Eric is in the room here. He helped us. He was one of our instructors. This was an excellent stakeholder engagement training seminar we held in 4 of 5 states. And basically, Missouri came in and really helped folks talk to farmers better and other stakeholders. And it was pretty intense training for a couple of days, very active, engaging. And they've taken a lot of training through PA and some of the other social engagement classes. And so they basically all wrapped it up in about 2 days. And so we had a lot of folks from all different backgrounds taking the class. And it was really good. We learned not only about different watersheds in the different states, but they learned a lot of different tools that they could use and work on together. One of the other things that we do is pasture walks or field tours. And so this is Rod Offey, who is on our steering committee. He has a managed grazing farm just outside of Coon Valley, and some of the most amazing trout habitat that you find in the state. And so it was really fun to work with him, and he provides a lot of good resources and things for our folks. What's really cool about this picture is you have Martin Conrad from Iowa DNR here, and then you have Adam Burr, who's the director now of Minnesota Corn Growers. And so Fishes and Farms has been really fun for me because it just breaks down those barriers that have so long been there. I'm a fish biologist, and a lot of times you like pointing fingers, and so this is one way that we can try to break down those barriers and just at least come to the table and talk. I'm not saying those talks aren't heated at times, because they're definitely heated, but we do get through and we're all in it for the fish. Another event we had was really successful, is the Ravine Workshop in Mankato. We worked with the Water Resources Center there, and it was really fun. We brought in 150 farmers came to watch. And actually Marty presented there too, so that's pretty cool. And that was a really good event and very successful. So we had the farmers learning basic hydrology, geomorphology, and then they got a taste of biology, ecology, and then we also had case studies, so they actually learned and they heard success stories. And then at the end, they had the local county folks talk about the different NRCS programs that they could sign up for, possible funding sources, and so it was a really cool event. And it was really neat because we had some folks from Wisconsin come over. We had a farmer from Wisconsin come over and talk about his best management practices on his farm. And so there you can see the planning committee and a lot of the folks that were there. One of my favorite events of the entire year occurred in Peno Creek. They had a field day, the farmers, and this is Peno Creek in Missouri. The farmers were very interested in cover crops, and they asked their local fish biologists and NRCS planners if they could learn more about cover crops. And so they had a field day, and so they got up, Missouri Department of Conservation brought their stream table, which was really cool. And NRCS brought their rain simulator. So the farmers actually got to see how streams work physically in the stream table. They could get in there and get their hands dirty if they wanted. And they went through some different scenarios with buffers and different things like that. And then they also, after that, they got to see the rain simulator, and they had 5 different pieces of ground, from conventional tillage to strip till, to all the way up to managed grazing. And they could actually see the water percolate or not through the soil. They were really surprised that there isn't any vegetation on there, and yet no water percolated through. And so it was really fun for them NRCS folks to, to go through the scenario and say why that happened, and then you see all the overflow from very muddy all the way to not as much turbidity. And so it was, and then the farmers kind of connected the dots between the stream table and the rain simulator, and they said, well, if we put cover crops on our land, it's going to be this much better for the fish, and we're going to improve the water quality that much more. I see it as a win-win. So it was really cool that the farmer stood and said that. It wasn't even a biologist that was saying you should do this. And so it was really powerful. And so John Scherger, then he's the farmer in the red here, he took all the farmers out and showed them his cover crops that he had planted, as well as his paddock system that he had for his cattle. And so they could see in action all the great things that they're doing there. So with that, I just thank all of you for attending today, and thanks for listening, and let me know if you have any questions.
Questions?
One thing I've seen as a theme is we're engaging adults, farmers, and local people. Where are the kids in this?
Well, at the Rush, I didn't show all my events, but at the Rush Pine Creek in Minnesota, we did have an event. I brought in invert pools. We do a lot of outreach for kids in our work. And if you go to the store and you buy those little kiddie pools, and then you go out and collect a bunch of invertebrates and put them in there. We did a lot of that so the kids could actually look at inverts and fish. We had some of the samples come in and put them in the kiddie pools, and they got to play in that. And then they also got to go in the stream and that kind of thing too. So some of our events are aimed more at the adults, and then some of them are more towards kids. So I just didn't show all of our events there.
I think I can speak pretty loud. Can people hear? I was curious about what are the incentives that are bringing the farmers to the table and to the meetings, and what's the hook that's getting them interested when a lot of other programs really haven't maybe been so successful?
That's a good question, and every watershed is very different. Some of the landowner groups are incentive-based in Minnesota. In the Rush Pine, some of those are incentive-based. In other areas in Missouri and those kind of, they are establishing relationships a lot of the times with the local groups and engaging them in a lot of different ways. In Missouri, they send all of their fish biologists through streams training and landowner engagement training. So those fish biologists really know how to talk to the landowners and really get engaged. And actually, social networking, the coffee clutches and stuff that the farmers go to. Once you get a project on one of their properties, it kind of spreads like wildfire. At first, they don't want anything to do with it, but then as soon as they see success going on in Farmer Joe's property, they want to find all about it. And so then a lot of it's word, just spread by word, word of mouth and things like that.
Other questions? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.